Hello and welcome to Cereal at Midnight. My name is Heath, and in this episode, we're talking about my top 5 movies of 2022. Now, full disclosure, there are some movies that I have not seen yet. At the end of every year, there's always a ton of movies that I haven't caught up with yet. So I haven't seen The Fabelmans yet. Glass Onion is not on Netflix as I'm recording this, and I have not yet seen Babylon, which it's not out yet. And I'm excited about. I'm really looking forward to those movies. But another full disclosure is that every year when I make these videos, here's my favorite new movies of this year. This is getting harder for me to do because I'm increasingly feeling disenfranchised with the new Hollywood product. And I'm not just talking about reboots and recycling ideas. I'm feeling really distant from what's coming out. It's just not really clicking with me. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's Hollywood. Hollywood, you've changed. And Hollywood says, I didn't change. You changed. For whatever reason, I'm not on the same page as what's coming out. So we'll see what happens in 2023. But I did come up with 5 movies this year that I wanted to talk to you guys about that I think do need to be discussed and that I want to kind of champion. So number 5, I'm going to kick it off with Prey. It is part of the Predator franchise, but it doesn't feel like a franchise movie, and I like that. It's small. It's not a tentpole film. It does have a lot of special effects in it, but they're used judiciously. They're used sparingly to support the story, and it creates a world that I feel like I'm connected with. I feel like this is a real place. It's not, PlayStation 5 land. It's this. It feels rooted in a specific time and place. It's got great action scenes. And it really, I'm just very surprised that this is coming. It's, 20th Century Studios, but it's Disney, right? This is Disney making this. Disney is not a studio that I have good feelings about at this point. So the fact that Prey made my list, I was really surprised. But Prey was wonderful. The downside of this is that I like the idea of, hey, take a Predator and stick it in, this Native American story. Well, in my review for that, which I have, check out my review at CerealAtMidnite.com. That concept, where else could you stick a Predator? I want to see a Predator in feudal Japan. There's so many, like medieval Predator against Knights of the Round, that kind of a thing. But then it becomes this big franchisey thing again. And what I like about Prey is it's just this one small movie. So I like Prey quite a bit. I guess number 4, it's weird that this is on my list. Weird, Weird, the Al Yankovic story. It's not that it's so funny, but what I loved about Weird is that it is such a potent piece of satire. The Al Yankovic biopic is a big swing at every biopic convention, from the grizzled narrator to the total deviation from what actually really happened, revisionist history for dramatic purpose. I made a video with Lisa Downs this past year after I saw Elvis and struggled with Elvis because I know a lot about Elvis, and I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't what happened. So, and people continue to go, yes, it is, Heath, that's exactly what happened. And I say, no. And then I confront them on certain issues and they go, well, that's just movies. I know, that's the problem, is that these movies are just running away with fiction. And so the Weird Al Yankovic movie really has a lot of fun with just making crap up. And we know it's not. It's brilliant. And I'm sorry, you guys. Evan Rachel Wood is maybe the brightest spot of 2022. Evan Rachel Wood in that movie is the greatest thing that I may have seen all year. She was amazing as Madonna. And I had so much fun. Even Daniel Radcliffe, like the premise behind the movie, hopefully you've seen it, but the idea that Weird Al Yankovic is independently wealthy and all these people are stealing his ideas, it's genius. It's absolutely genius. I don't know how this movie plays for people that are younger than me, but I grew up with Al in the 80s, and this is such a wonderful use of his skills and what he does. It's maybe Al Yankovic for the 2020s. And I think that it's, again, not that it's this hilarious movie. It's just really smart and really well done. And it's a pretty fantastic takedown of these biopic conventions. So, and it came out the same year that Elvis came out. And you can see there's a direct line between those two. Like, oh, this movie is a direct, they reflect on each other. Number 3, it's probably going to be Amsterdam, which did not do well at the box office. Not that means anything. All that means is that audiences didn't want to go see this. I think that this is a really interesting movie in the sense that it is, so it's David O. Russell. I think it's his first movie in 7 years. And because it didn't do well at the box office, it's probably going to be a long time before we see another David O. Russell movie. And that's sad, because we're probably going to have 6 Ghostbusters movies before David O. Russell gets another movie. This is, so I don't want to spoil this for people that haven't seen Amsterdam. It's Christian Bale, it's Margot Robbie, it's John David Washington, Chris Rock is in this movie, Anya Taylor-Joy, who we're going to talk about again in just a second. I'm just tipping my hand here. Some of you guys are like, oh, I know what he's going to talk about. This is a really interesting movie that's taken from real American history. And I don't even know if I can talk about this because I want you guys to watch the movie. What if we had historical documents that within the last 100 years or so, there was a group of people, wealthy industrialist people, that were trying to control American democracy? That business controlled democracy. What if? Well, here's a movie that's pulled from American history with facts about this very topic. It's very interesting. But it's also, for me, it's a little too indulgent. It runs over 2 hours. It could have been 20 minutes shorter. But here's the thing. Christian Bale is great. I figured out about halfway through the movie that he's doing Columbo. He was like, wait a minute. So he's got a glass eye in the movie. He's like, wait a minute, sir. You're telling me that you went to the thing and the guy was like, I don't understand. I was like, he's doing Columbo. So, went to the internet machine. He's doing Columbo with other things mixed in. But like his starting point is he watched an episode of Columbo and he was like, he just started taking stuff. And I'm like, he's doing Columbo. So that's fun for me. Margot Robbie is always amazing in anything that she's in. This is specifically fun because, she's she's in Amsterdam living an artist life, but she's out of step with, her truth and all this stuff. It's got a lot of character actors in it. Here's the thing that I think is really interesting about Amsterdam is their performances. You have to imagine that all these actors were just happy to be in this movie because they get to play. It is a character movie. There's no action scenes. There's no chases. There's no set pieces. When we talk about set pieces, we're talking about, this is the part where the roller coaster goes off the rails and ends up going down the hill and they're chasing it. And that's a set piece. There's none of that. None of that. It's just people talking. But these actors get to be characters. And it's like quirk layered on top of quirk on top of quirk. And I like that. That's the kind of thing that I want to see. So while I like the movie, I like the performances better. And it's great to see that these actors have a place to go for these movies. There's less and less options for just, adults in a movie. Which, it sounds crazy, but there are less movies with adults just being adults in a movie. I talked to Mike Malloy a few weeks back, Tough Guy movie expert Mike Malloy. He said something in that interview. He said that he connects with movies where a regular person faces extraordinary circumstances and has to meet them or be crushed by them. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the idea. It's like a normal person faces extraordinary circumstances and has to overcome them. And we're not talking about dinosaurs. We're not talking about, superheroes or supervillains. We're talking about normal people. Bob from Three Doors Down, not the band. Bob from Three Houses Down, having to face something that's a challenge in his life. We're getting further away from those stories. That yes, they're still being made, but then they don't do well at the box office, and so that's in the message to the studios, Disney. Well, we just need more CGI animated movies. My number 2. Oh, is this how I'm going to do it? See, I'm still, right up until this moment, I'm still torn between my number 2 and my number 1. All right, number 2, I'm sticking with it. Number 2, Bullet Train. This movie got so heavily advertised, but no one's talking about it. I never heard anybody talking about this movie after they saw it. So the co-director of John Wick and the director of Deadpool 2 goes to make a movie with Brad Pitt about a group of assassins on a bullet train and in Japan. And that is wonderful to me. This movie feels like a 1998 Miramax movie, and that's the highest praise I can give it. It's got like 1 foot in Tarantino, it's got 1 foot in Guy Ritchie, but it is its own thing. And this is the kind of movie that I had felt like they weren't really making anymore, and then along comes Bullet Train. It's a big budget movie. It has a lot of set pieces. So if you're like, well, Heath doesn't like CGI, Heath doesn't like big action scenes. Well, this is my number 2 movie of the year, you guys. So I just like it done in a certain way. I need it connected to characters. And this movie is all about characters. Brad Pitt is wonderful in this movie. The Brad Pitt that we're getting now in his, what is this? Maybe his autumn phase, right? He's getting older, and this elder, because he's still got 30 years on screen probably, knock on wood, but this Brad Pitt that we're getting, who has proven himself and just is doing things for fun now. Like, I liked how he popped up in the Sandra Bullock movie, The Lost City. And this is, by the way, Sandra Bullock is in this, but very briefly. I feel like they did each other a favor. Like, he pops up in Lost City, she pops up in Bullet Train. But it is just so much fun, and it is super violent. But as a character actor guy, I mean, that's why I love. Look at all these movies behind me, all these noir films, and the spaghetti westerns and stuff. I like actors. I like character actors. I like to see actors doing work. I like to see them having fun and sinking their teeth into meaty parts. This is that to a 10. I mean, it is incredible. So I don't want to say anything else about this. Probably the less you know going in, the better. But it's very smart. To pull this screenplay off required a lot of thought and a lot of I can't believe this movie exists, because it doesn't feel like a studio would okay this. I feel like what happened is the director, David Leitch, I feel like because John Wick is huge, because he comes from stunts too. So he knows how to do all these great action scenes. Because of the Deadpool 2 thing, because of John Wick, he had chips in the bank that he cashed on this movie. Directors have to do one or two for them, and if you're lucky, you get to do one for you. I think this was the one for him, and I love it so much. I think it's great. The only movie that I think might have been better in 2022 is The Northman. You guys, this is an incredibly visceral, brutal, mostly historically accurate Viking tale. It's even adapted from Icelandic sagas. And it is not done with humor. It is not done with levity, or it's not approachable. It is an amazing, one-to-one adaptation of just 900 era, the year 900. I think it's 981 or something like that. A Norse saga, an Icelandic saga. It is brutal. It is so brutal it feels like a horror movie at times, which is not a coincidence, because this comes from Robert Eggers, the guy behind The Witch and The Lighthouse. This is his first studio picture, and it might be his last studio picture too, because one, I think it was $80 to $90 million, and it did not make its money back. Two, he didn't have final cut for this movie, so this is not his. Now, this is his cut, right? He's following the notes given by the studio, but the studio did have notes. He did not get to make his vision purely as he wanted to. And he went on record after this movie came out, and he said, I don't know that I'm going to do another one of these, because I need to have final cut. I need to be in charge of my movie. So the idea that this is a compromise in his vision is fascinating to me, because it's so intense that it's almost overwhelming for me. It is so just balls to the wall, pounding action, brutal action. It reminds me, so I was one of the few people that saw The 13th Warrior in theaters. I think that was 98 as well. That might have been 99. Antonio Banderas it's an adaptation of Michael Crichton's book, Eaters of the Dead, which was his version of Beowulf. And he replaces the monster, he replaces Grendel with a tribe of cannibal kind of people. That I saw that, and that was it was my secret for a long time. It was The 13th Warrior is an amazing movie. I haven't felt this way about a movie since until now, because that giving me that Viking action. In the year that what's the Thor movie that came out? Guns N' Roses and Thunder. In the year that movie came out, this shows how far these movies are from their source material. Thor here, I'm about to nerd out with you guys. If you read Thor, the Walt Simonson run in the comics, even if you read Jason Aaron's run on Thor, which is what they adapted for that new Thor movie, it is miles away from what we got on screen, which was jokey and funny, and Thor's a humorous character now. This is it's all in this movie. Valhalla and Viking myth and the supernatural is handed in a way where it might be real if you believe it, but if you don't, you're oh, this is a hallucination. It is incredible. And it shows how powerful these myths and this mythology is. You know what? When I'm watching this movie, I keep thinking who would have loved this is J.R.R. Tolkien, because Tolkien loved Norse mythology, and of course he adapted a lot of it into the Lord of the Rings, and we see some of it with Peter Jackson's version of the Lord of the Rings. But if you go back to just the pure Tolkien writing, he did an adaptation of Beowulf. He did a translation of Beowulf. Tolkien loved this stuff. And I'm like, what would he think of this movie with the nudity and the decapitations and it is just the most brutal Viking movie that we have ever had on screen. And I can only think of about 5, right? But it is absolutely brutal, and I love it for it. It's the most powerful movie experience I had in 22, for sure. And I think because of that, it's also my favorite. So that's thoughts on 2022 at the movies. And like I said, we'll follow up later with some of the other stuff that's come out. Maybe we can talk more about the Fabelmans or Glass Onion or other things possibly later, even in the comments of this video. But what are your top 5 movies of 2022? I'd really like to continue that conversation in the comments below. Guys, thanks so much. Take care. Until next time, I will catch you later.